Empire.
Hello and welcome to my podcast. Today, it's an unusual podcast, a victory one. So the voice of the Washington football team, Bram, Weinstein, and I discuss why Washington or how Washington pulled off the shocking upset over Tampa Bay. What does this win mean? Well, clearly it means a lot. We get into all that. Plus, we talk about the loss of defensive end Chase Young. News wasn't good. And we touch on Sam Huff's death at the end as well. You can follow Bram on Twitter at RealBramW, and you can read my work on ESPN.com. I'll have a story up Monday about that final 10-minute and 26-second drive, a thing of beauty, the best drive I've seen in a long time. What went into it and what it meant and what it symbolized about the game. And we'll say, and Bram and I get into this is one of the most complete wins I've seen them have over a good team in quite a while. Washington controlled this game. Was it a one-game mirage or the start of something? Impossible to know until we see what happens next week. In this sport, it's always about what you do next, whether a play, a game, or a season. But if the defense keeps playing this way and how it has been progressing in recent weeks, then Washington has a chance to finish strong. But what it all means, stay tuned. And with that, here's my conversation with the voice of the Washington football team, Bram Weinstein. Bram, this is not what I think you or I expected. I don't think that's what anybody expected. And there's something else. Just before we started recording this, you just said something that I think is important. What did you just tell me?
There was nothing lucky about that.
Right.
Nothing. That was at least today, the better team won. They were tough. Their game plan defensively was outstanding. They made Brady earn everything. They caught a couple of breaks with the first interception and a drop pass here or there. But overall, go look at the box score and it'll tell you everything you need to know. They were dominant today, both sides of the ball. They had a 10-plus minute drive in the fourth quarter against a Super Bowl defense. That was incredible. Incredible win today.
And even like the first turnover, those were forced. The first play was a big hit by Cam Curl. The second one, it's really good coverage and recognition by both Cole Holcomb and then Bobby McCain. I mean, it was an easy pick from McCain. He dropped one like that in Denver, but he got it here. But it was because he's in the right spot and because Cole Holcomb. First of all, there was some pressure, and then Cole Holcomb squeezed Mike Evans. There was nowhere for him to throw the ball.
No, I mean, defensively, it's not even close how this is their best game of the year. I mean, it's not even remotely close. And, look, like when they gave up the late field goal at the first half, I went, that's going to haunt them. Yeah. And then when they got within 3 in the third quarter, I said, well, listen, this is a great effort. You could just feel it. Like it's going to go the wrong way. It's going to go the wrong way. And it didn't. And that fourth quarter drive, oh, man. I mean, that's as good as it gets. I think they deserve a lot of credit for that's a very hard team to run on. They were very hard to run on today. They didn't stop running on them. They knew it was going to be an enemy for them behind, that they could play clock, and they did break off a couple of them. I love the game plan, and defensively, they were just frankly outstanding across the board. They gave up one big play, and honestly, if you rewatch that big play, Kendall Fuller has every reason in the world to be angry that there was no penalty called on that play.
What's amazing to me too, and you go back to what you said, like they were really good in all facets, and that's what surprised me. And I think from coaching to playing to execution to everything except for that one play, where again, like you said, but even with the run game, the commitment to stick with it, that's what impressed me, because going into it, I think anybody would say you can't run on it. It's a hard team to run against, but
they are.
What they are, and Gibson had finished with what he had 64 yards, but he had a couple that lost yards that took away down that total. But it was just, again, the commitment to it. And eventually you break a couple, nothing really long, but you just were able to sustain drives and put yourself in good position. And Heineke makes plays. I mean, Adam Humphrey makes a great diving catch on that third down late. There were big plays all over the place. So they really this was as good a win as I've seen them have in a long time. Even like you go back to last year in Pittsburgh, they were behind in that game. They came back. It was a great comeback, but it wasn't like they played great all game. This was the best, wire-to-wire game that they've had in a long time.
Yeah, this was the best game they've played in the Ron Rivera era. I mean, even of all the wins a year ago, most of it was, and they showed a lot of resilience and fortitude and all that stuff. But this was the best, front end game. They had a 3-and-out in the opening drive. Like, they give up points to everybody on an opening drive. Yeah. They had a lead. They never trailed. Like, when things got tight, when things got close, they closed the door on them. They kept responding. And here's the part I think was really, really, really impressive. Like, it wasn't that Tampa Bay didn't come to play or they didn't take them seriously or trap game or any of that stuff. That was as hard-hitting a game as I've seen them involved in a while. That was a violent game today. It was a really violent game today. Tampa Bay was off a bye. They came to play. They went blow to blow with them. There were serious injuries they had to overcome. I'll tell you what, I felt like this was in honor of Sam Huff. He would have loved this game, that they won a game that was a heavyweight fight like that.
Yes, and I think, it's funny because Antonio Gibson did say that was the most physical game he's been in, period. So
it was violent.
Yeah.
It was so violent. The hit up McLaurin taking that hit over the middle, getting up, pounding his chest. Sheriff goes out, comes back in. McLaurin went out, came back in. They lose Chase Young. Ricky Seals-Jones is out. Now they don't really have a tight end target anymore. They still figured out a way to overcome it. And, they had trouble running the ball. Everybody has trouble running the ball in them. Their front is ridiculous. Devin White is a monster.
Yeah, that's a good deal.
They stuck with it. They stuck with it. This was the most impressive win of Rivera's era, I think, by far and not
by far. And you know what impressed me too? And there were a ton of big plays. I mean, Terry's catch on that one where he just gets destroyed after he already left the game with a collarbone injury was really. That's a guy who just you say what's the definition of somebody who wants it? It's that play, and again I go back to Humphrey's diving catch. It's that play. It's Antonio Gibson's touchdown run where he just bowls through with this big pileup where you think he stopped and he just kept going and going. And it was a short run, but it was a huge run. And it was because of just a will. And I think I haven't seen this team with that kind of a will in a while. And then you look at Heineke, Bram, is 26 for 32, 256, and a touchdown. And it's funny because this is the first team that he's faced twice now in his career since he's been in Washington. And it's a team that, you could say, well, they didn't know him last year in the playoffs. He played better today than he did even in that game.
I mean, there are things I'm surprised by. I'm surprised the defense played as well as it did. I am, because they just haven't – I had hoped they would play this way all year, but because they just hadn't done it, my expectations were lowered. I was at the point where I'm like, I know you're better than this, but you got to show me. With Heineke – I'll tell you what, like all the people, I think we talked about this last time, all the people that were saying things like they should bench him, my gut after the Denver game was, it's not his fault. Like he's not playing poorly. He's not making bad decisions. Maybe the execution in the red zone could be better. And you could throw some of that on him for sure. But like, I don't think that this was on him. And honestly, I'd rather see it out with him because I think there's an upside with him that we don't have the answer to yet. And I feel really good for him. Like this is a really impressive notch for him. And it is the first really incredible win of his career. He just beat Tom Brady. There was nothing lucky about it. He led the offense for them. You mentioned it, like the McLaurin throw was great. The Gibson stuff was tough. He looked better. Like this is one of the things too. I know you saw this too. He looked way better in practice this past week than he had in weeks before. I think the bye week came at the right time for him to help him heal up a little bit. I think he needed it. He looked better. Yeah. But like the other thing was there was a throw where Devin White got a free rush on him. He's backpedaling and he hits Gibson. And it's just a 5-yard play, but it kept the drive going. And it was like he had to make a quick decision. He got sacked 5 times. He still kept getting up. He was awesome today. He was absolutely awesome today.
Well, you know what I like too? It's the resiliency because it's not like they didn't have negative plays and it's not like they weren't tested. It wasn't like everything went swimmingly for them start to finish. And that's what impressed me. So you have Like John Bates comes out and almost fumbles the ball. Now it was ruled correctly that it wasn't a fumble, but it's also something that gets in somebody's head. And then later in a key spot, Heineke comes to him. I think it was on a third down over the middle. Then you have Dax Milne fumbling the ball, and they give up a touchdown, and they respond with a 10.5-minute drive. The William Jackson play a few weeks ago, that's a killer. But, going back with Taylor, against Green Bay and Denver, two very good defenses. Well, Green Bay was banged up, but they're still a good defense. And Denver's a good defense, and they did move the ball. And he threw it well between the 20s where he struggled, especially was inside the 20. And even against Denver, there were a couple throws like, if you make an accurate throw on this play, it is a big gain in the red zone. It might be a touchdown in the red zone. So, and today he made those throws. The throw to Carter was perfect. That was a really nice throw and a good read.
They were right there in Denver. They were right there in Green Bay. Honestly, they were right there. Last week in Denver, or 2 weeks ago, they outgained the Broncos and lost. That is the 9th time since the start of 2020 that they've outgained somebody and lost a game. That is by far the most in the NFL. So like when Rivera was saying things like, we're close, I think he believed it. And there are some things behind it that are there. He's just saying it's this or it's that, or it's youth and inexperience here, or it's bad timing there. And I think he's right about a lot of it. If the defense plays like it did today,
right.
They made Tom Brady earn everything today. He
looked uncomfortable.
One deep ball. They moved.
He looked uncomfortable.
They had him make mistakes. He threw a couple of crazy incompletions. The McCain pick was an overthrow. Sure, they got lucky on the first interception, whatever. But it was a good hit by Curl. Tom Brady was not beating them today. They handled him. He had to earn everything that he did. Collectively, this was by far their best performance defensively.
And what I also liked, in addition to that, and one of the things when you watch Tampa, and I'm sure you saw this too, you watch Tampa on film, they're going to do a lot of underneath stuff, and they get yards after the catch from it. And I thought they did an excellent job today at swarming on, the linebackers, Cole Holcomb a few times, and swarming the ball on some of those short throws. So if Leonard Fournette got it, they were very, very short tacklers, or they were getting guys gang tackling. And that was to me a major key for that, because that's what Tampa was going to do, is try and work down the field that way. Typically, that's what they do. So, I thought that was another big key. And I don't want to listen, they're 3-6, and to make this game really matter, you have to build off it, right? And just like last year, you beat Pittsburgh, or it was Cincinnati, Dallas, then Pittsburgh, but you got to build off a win to make it worth something. And I do, but I think the key here is that we've seen signs the last few weeks of a game where you feel like, this part is coming along and that part is coming along. And I think today we saw that. Now, again, what they do next week, we'll see. But it was a culmination, I think, to a degree, of a lot of things that we have been seeing. And the other thing, Bram, for the second game in a row, they kept an offense under 300 yards.
Yes. And this is a real one today. I mean, this is a real one that they did that with today. Yeah. So, look, I think there's a lot of good things here. I mean, it needs, I wish they won the Denver game or the New Orleans game. I think I'd be feeling like you, very differently about their prospects if they were 4-5 as opposed to 3-6. And they won either one of those games,
right,
and they were both extremely winnable, they'd be right there. Their schedule has been very, very, very difficult. This was the 4th time they played a team that, as of coming into today, was top 7 in defense. They're playing with their backup quarterback. Sheriff's been out a month. Logan Thomas has been out a month. McLaurin's been banged up. Gibson's been banged up. And they're hanging in there. And I appreciate that. And then today's a good validation win. But I'm like you, they got to win a bunch of games in a row.
You got to build up
in the second half of the season last year. And then I'll feel differently about where the season ends up. And it is crazy. It doesn't get any easier. I mean, all of a sudden, Carolina's got Cam Newton. So they played a multiple MVP today. They're going to play a former MVP next week. They're going to play a former MVP the week after that. Then they're going to get the Raiders, who are at least playing well right now. Then they're going to get Dak, who, all things being equal to the NFC right now, might be the MVP of the NFC. So it doesn't get any easier. I mean, it's going to get a lot. It's going to remain really, really difficult. But if they play like they did today, consistently, I think they're going to get a lot more results that they're looking for.
Well, and as we talk, Carolina's up by 20 on Arizona, and Arizona without Kyler Murray and Hopkins and all that, but still. But to that point, and I think this is one thing we've talked about, and I know I've been preaching this, is the one thing I want to see is this defense really stepping up, because if you see that, then you can say going forward, you have that, then you know what you have there. Like you thought you had it, and then you weren't sure, and then if you can end this season saying the defense is there now. It's going to be a little bit harder without Chase Young, and we're going to get to him in a minute, and obviously Montez Sweat out for a little bit. But if they can really have a good finish, then you can feel solid about that side of the ball, even more so than last year, because they would have been much more tested this year, and they would have responded. So that's, to me, a big, big thing. As much as you obviously want the wins, but they are still banged up in so many places that it's going to be hard to get a lot of them. But if you can finish with that defense looking really good, then you can feel like, okay, maybe it is still going in the right direction. And speaking of Chase, because I want to get to him, and it does look, as we record this, the fear is torn ACL, which would obviously mean he's done for the season, which would be a huge blow. And whatever anybody says about how he's playing, and he wasn't playing the way that everybody wanted him to, himself included, but the one thing he did do is he commanded attention. And he's a big athletic guy that you felt like if you can do X, Y, or Z, you're going to have a good finish because the talent is there. What kind of loss is that for them, Bram?
I think it's huge. I mean, I do. I know, and I don't want to hear anybody, well, he was out of there and they played well. No, you don't. I don't think you just replace guys like that long term over a period of time. Right. You don't. I was talking to the coaching staff in the middle of the week, and I was asking them, as everybody was, about, he got a lot of heat this week, and I think some of it is deserved, and I thought some of it was, not deserved. And I talked to the coaches about him, and one of them gave me a stat that really stood out to me. And they said, let me tell you about what's going on with him this year. They
Double teams and chips.
They said
3rd and 10 to 7, 3rd and 7 to 10. Yeah.
3rd and 7 to 10 or longer. They're chipping him 57% of the time.
Yep.
The league average on people is 30%, which means double the amount of time they're going after him. Why? They're scared of him.
Right.
They know he can change a game. They're giving him a tremendous amount of attention because they know what kind of game-changing player he is. And that really, I thought, put into perspective. Is he having a bad year, or is he getting so much attention and he doesn't know how to handle it yet? And I think that was their point. He hasn't learned how to handle some of this stuff yet to get to the point where he's going to produce no matter what somebody does to him. Because I'm going to guess TJ Watt gets this too. Or Myles Garrett gets this too, or other great pass rushers get this, but he's in that class is what they're saying. And he is not effective because it's working. So I think their whole point was what he's not is a finished product. And we're trying to get through to him that these are what people are doing to you, and this is what you need to do to win against it no matter what. And unfortunately, we're not going to see it, for the rest of the year, I would assume. And I think that's unfortunate. And I do think it's a big loss.
Yeah.
And couple that with Sweat being out at the same time. And you're like, look, it's not that I don't have some confidence in James Smith-Williams or Tuhill or, whoever else Shakatoni, whoever else they put out there. It's not those guys. Those are their first round pick studs.
Right.
So, they're going to have to figure out we're going to find out what Jack Del Rio's made of over the next month, 2 months. You got some stuff you can draw up with the rest of the defense to get some pressure without those guys, because it's going to be interesting without them.
The Timberwolves select Kevin Garnett from Farragut Academy.
A high school kid? No chance.
You saw the future of what basketball was about to become.
He does whatever it takes to win a basketball game. All I know is all out. Abdul, what's up? I want to be challenged to the end.
Anything's possible! Kevin Garnett, Anything is Possible. Now streaming on Showtime.
This episode is brought to you by My First Million. Hosts Sean Purry and Sam Parr have each started and sold tens of millions of dollars worth of businesses. And each week, they leverage their experience and team of researchers to spoon-feed you new business ideas. That way you can discover the next big thing before it explodes. Like Austin Coker. He started Comfort Plants, which now makes $10K a month or more. Listen to My First Million on Spotify today.
With Chase, and one of the things, and we had him on the podcast last week for a couple minutes, but one of the things I did talk to him about is the chippers, and he said one of the things, because last year he did get double teams, but he wasn't always getting chipped as much as he is now. And what happens is you're coming from different angles. It's not always the guy right up on the line, right next to him. Sometimes it's the back coming up and doing it. Sometimes the tight end's there. And what he was saying is that he didn't always know when someone's going to chip him. So he wasn't playing playing it the right way because he wasn't sure. And I think all that stuff was kind of messing with his head a little bit. And so, clearly he and Montez are very, very talented, and you want those kind of guys in the field because with Chase Young, he could change a game at any time. Now, he hadn't yet, but they knew it was there because they saw it last year. The other thing they miss with him is the energy, because he does provide energy, and he is a leader for them. And so I think that's something that's why, he comes back on the field in the second half. And I don't know if it's the best place to be on crutches on the sidelines during a game, but he's also a guy that does want to provide that energy. And so he did, that's one of the reasons he was out there. So,
listen, there's a lot of things you can complain about with him, but the one thing that I didn't want to hear was it's not for a lack of effort. It's not for a lack of energy. It's not for a lack of belief in his team. It's not for a lack of this mattering to him. None of that is a problem. But does he need to get more skilled to become, the type of person we think he's going to be on a weekly, yearly basis? Yes, he does. Unfortunately, we're going to have to wait till next year probably to see how that manifests. And then, he's tearing his ACL if that's what happened in November. So when is he practicing again? I don't know. It's going to be a while, unfortunately.
Yeah, it will. And, speaking of ways that you can do things with Del Rio, the one thing that they do have is with that 3 safety set, safety / linebacker with Landon Collins, because he still does play some safety roles. But what you do have, and Cam Curl was talking about this after the game, and it's something that you've seen a lot, both those guys can blitz. So they're going to have to try and create more pressure than they were before. Maybe some more, they have been running some more games, maybe do a little bit more of that, involving some of the linebackers a little bit more with that, and getting creative, because you're losing 2 guys who the sack totals weren't there. And to me, the consistent pressures weren't there, but the attention was there. And then you can play off that attention. You could send the blitz off of a Chase Young side because you knew he's going to get 2 guys, and that might free a Landon Collins. So you're going to have to be creative to really compensate for that. And that's why I wonder, what can they build off with this win? And I think they will. I think the confidence is real. And you could feel it with these guys afterwards, listening to them in the postgame. They felt like this wasn't a fluke. They felt like this is something they were building toward. So now I'm really curious to see, how do they build on this?
Yeah. I mean, listen, I want to go back to what we were originally talking about, which is, last year when they were 2-7 and turned it around, I saw it. I could see it on the field. I was watching it going, they keep playing like this. It's going to start going their way. It's going to start going their way. It's going to start going their way. I could feel it. I hadn't seen that here. And, when you haven't seen it, the concern is, okay, until you prove otherwise, I need to know that you guys are still in this thing.
Right.
And today was, more than anything, for me, and I think probably for Rivera and really anybody in that building, a huge relief. Huge relief. The win is incredible. The way they won is incredible. But I think just the fact that we now know that they were not collectively calling this a lost cause for whatever reason they would come up with to call it that is a humongous relief to me, because I got to be honest, I wasn't sure what we were going to get today at all, at all.
Yeah. And I think you could tell, to me, I could tell early on, I felt like they were going to be in this for a while. Just, I thought I liked the way the defense was coming out. I didn't like that they didn't convert on one of those, the great field position early without getting just 2 field goals. But, I think that third one really kind of gave them the momentum, getting up 13-0. So, I like I said, I like the confidence that you hear. I think what they needed as much as anything, Bram, was validation, because you can sit there and say, I think we're going in the right way. I think we're doing this, but you need validation at some point to say, oh, okay, this is what it looks like when we do this. and the players needed that. And I think, and I would say, this is not a finished product by any means. And it may be that they end up, who knows how many more wins they'll get. But what it shows you is, okay, they are capable of this.
This is a different year. Dallas is too far ahead of them. They're not going to win the division. The only hope they have is to try to steal like one of the last wild card spots. And that's if they'd have to go on a run just to do that. So it is a different kind of year. The margin for error is way, 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 much more thin than it was a year ago. But I think for all of us just to feel like, I think I was starting to get nervous that we're going back to square one again. And, this was a good win. And then there's all these little things that these guys probably don't pay attention to, but we do, and they shouldn't care about, but I know are meaningful. Tom Brady off a bye is 15-4. They don't lose a lot off a bye. He has had, I looked this up, I almost could not believe this. This guy has not had in his career as a starting quarterback an in-season 3-game losing streak. Wow. Not once. And here he is about to lose his second in a row off a bye. Trust me, that is rare, like really, really, really rare. So all of that added up to, I don't know what I'm getting from this team. I know what I'm getting from that guy.
Right.
Even if they play well, I don't expect the result to be very good. And the fact that I'm walking out of that stadium going, oh man, we just not only went toe to toe with them, but physically beat them in every way was just so satisfying. Really was.
There's not much more to be said about that win. But I do want to end on one thing, and that's Sam Huff, who died over the weekend. And we both knew him, and people who've followed him for a long time, maybe some of you watched him, but a lot of you listened to him. And I'm just curious from Bram, from your thoughts, what did getting to know him mean to you?
I'm one of the kids who grew up here, did the famous turn down the TV, turn up the radio, listen to Frank, Sonny, and Sam. So for me, Sam and Sonny and Frank, but Sam and Sonny from a player perspective, or just, the voice of the team, they're the institutions for me. So it was a great privilege of mine the first go around when I was on the broadcast to be on the sidelines to actually work with them. And that was a real, there's a lot of pinch me moments that I've been very lucky in my career, but that is certainly one of them. And I don't want to sit here and pretend I knew Sam really, really well, but I knew him enough. That edge that he had, it was always there.
It was always there.
It was always there. It would, he was the most competitive person you'll ever come across. He also was a really nice man.
Yes.
He also was like
nice, smart man.
Major. You could tell why everyone loved Sonny and Sam so much, because even off the air, they were such people persons. Like they were really, really, really engaged with people. And they frankly, like, it's funny because we talk about, and we've spent a lot of time in recent weeks about how this organization is stuck in mired in this and mired in that and can't get out of this and can't get out of that. Before Sonny and Sam came to the Washington football team, they were in the midst of decade-long runs of not, even
when they were here.
No winning seasons.
Yeah.
Yes, no winning seasons. And it wasn't until Vince Lombardi showed up that convinced Sam to come out of retirement did they actually finally turn it around and actually start winning, even with Sonny as the quarterback.
Correct.
For anyone who've spent the amount of time that he spent in our organization, I don't think you could say enough great things about him, so I'm very lucky that I got to know him. It's you grow up and you want to do this for a living. You never quite know that you'll get to do it, with those people that you revere, and he's one of them. And so I was sad obviously today, but God, I was so happy for him. I felt like he was smiling down on this. Not only did they win,
this was his kind of game.
Oh my God, this beyond this kind of game, a game where people are knocking the snot out of each other. Go watch the violent world of Sam Huff. You'll see that in this game today. You'll see it.
Well, here's the thing, Bram. Both Sonny and Sam would have enjoyed this one because both sides of the ball. So, well, one of the things for me, and I obviously did not grow up here. I grew up in Cleveland as a Browns fan, and but what I knew was Jim Brown, and what I knew of Jim Brown was his rivalry with Sam Huff. And so there was, when FedEx opened, they had a day where the media came out. They brought us over here. It was in the spring or something like that. And you could bring your family. And they had a little a gathering, or not a gathering, but like a buffet or whatever set up in the lounges or whatever. And my dad got to meet Sam Huff. And, you know, he was like, I think that was my dad was a big time Browns fan, but a huge thrill for him to meet Sam Huff because of what he meant to football. And it wasn't just to, it was to New York, it was to Washington, but it was to football, how popular he helped make this sport. And one of the times for me, and I tweeted this out, but I was at a Bobby Mitchell Hall of Fame Golf Classic dinner one night, and it was an absolute privilege to be there. I was a last-minute invitee, sitting at a table with Oscar Robertson. It was awesome. Probably maybe not as good for Robertson as it was for me, but it was great. And at one point, all the Hall of Famers, I started getting up and basically praising Bobby Mitchell. But then they start telling stories about other guys. And Jim Brown, because like the big thing with Jim Brown was he would lay on the ground if he was getting hit and then, you know, make people wonder if he was hurt, and then he'd get up and go back and run over your butt for 10 more yards. But he made a joke. He goes, Sam, the reason I always laid on the ground so long was so you could jump on the pile and get credit for a tackle. And the whole room busted out laughing, but it was great. But it showed the respect between the two. But you knew with Huff that he still thought late in his career, even as a broadcaster, that he could go out and lay out some people. Because there was one time he's looking at, apparently like in a training camp, he's eyeing up John Riggins, and Riggins looked at him and was like, you're wondering if you can take me down, aren't you? And it was basically, yeah. And like, he would do that with guys. He still thought, I'm sure in his 70s, that he could go out there and put some of these guys on their butt. And that's why he was a lot of fun. And, you know, as a broadcaster, as you get on there, it was, you know, certainly for you guys can speak to that more than I can. But I felt like for me, as someone who loved football, to get to know him at all, he was a legend before, you know, it's a cool part of the job to get to meet people like that.
Yeah. CJ, who produces our game broadcast, reminded me, I guess Sal Palantonio wrote a book some years ago where he called Sam Huff overrated.
Yes.
And Sam, I'll never forget this guy was on the broadcast at the time. And Sal was covering, it was probably a Giants, Redskins, or Eagles, Redskins, because he was always there for those games. And Sal was there, and Sam found out Sal was there, and he came out looking for him and actually wanted to beat him up. Wanted to beat up Sal Palantonio for writing he was an overrated linebacker.
That's fantastic.
He was not kidding. He wasn't kidding. He wanted to.
You don't make it to where he did without that kind of fire and become the violent world of Sam Huff without that. And it's awesome. And it was, I hope he's at peace, and I'm glad I got to know him just like I know you are. And Bram, we'll see what happens this week if they can build off it. But for today, for now, folks, you can go enjoy a great win.
Yep.
Thanks, Bram.
This episode is brought to you by VMware. What more could you do if you unleashed the power of all clouds? Learn how VMware cross-cloud services can help your business navigate change faster. Visit vmware.com/welcome.
That's it for this episode. I'm glad you were able to enjoy one for a change. At least the game. I hope you enjoy all the episodes, but the game and the post-game podcast, I hope you enjoyed it. I'll be back with another episode Tuesday night or Wednesday. Talk to you next time.